You felt it? That strange tension in your spirit that refuses to leave? That feeling that something is ending, yet something greater is waiting just beyond the horizon? You have tried to explain it to yourself. You have tried to ignore it. Told yourself that maybe it is only wishful thinking. But today, hear these words with your heart wide open. God is not the author of confusion. When God begins stirring your spirit, often because He is preparing you for a transition you cannot yet see. And for someone listening to this message, June 10, 2026 is not just another date on a calendar. It represents a season of movement. It represents a divine shift. Represents the moment when God begins to reveal that your new home is ready and that He is relocating you from what was into what will be. People listening right now who have spent years feeling trapped in environments that no longer fit who they are becoming. You have prayed in places that felt too small for your calling. You have cried in rooms that witnessed your struggles. Carried burdens in locations that remind you more of pain than purpose. Yet through every difficult moment, God has been watching. Through every disappointment, God has been working. Through every delay, been building something beyond your imagination. What looked like abandonment was preparation. What looked like rejection was protection. What looked like a closed door was actually God preventing you from settling for less than what He intended. Understand these truths. God never moves people randomly. Every divine relocation has a purpose attached to it. Every transition carries a lesson. Every shift contains a blessing. When God moved people from seasons of struggle into seasons of promise, never simply about changing geography. It was about changing identity. It was about changing perspective. It was about positioning them where their purpose could flourish. Greatest obstacle for many people is that they keep trying to hold on to places God is calling them to leave. They continue investing energy into environments that no longer nourish their growth. They keep asking God to fix what God is already replacing. Comes a moment when God says enough. Enough struggling in spaces that limit your potential. Enough crying over doors that have already closed. Enough mourning seasons that have already ended. A moment when heaven declares that a chapter is complete. And when that moment arrives, no human being can stop what God has decided. No obstacle can stand permanently in the way. No opposition can cancel a destiny written by the hand of God. Some of you have been wondering why certain relationships have changed. You have been wondering why familiar surroundings suddenly feel uncomfortable. You have been wondering why old routines no longer satisfy your spirit. Because God is creating a holy dissatisfaction within you. He is awakening you to the reality that you were not created to remain where you started. Growth requires movement. Transformation requires change. Elevation requires transition. God knows that if you become too comfortable in a place meant only for a season, you may miss the destination He has prepared for your future. Challenge with divine relocation is that God often begins moving your spirit before He moves your circumstances. First, He changes your desires. Then He changes your vision. Then He changes your expectations. Finally, He changes your environment. People become discouraged during this process because they can sense change coming but cannot yet see it. They feel movement in their spirit while everything around them appears unchanged. Yet this is precisely how God works. Builds the unseen before revealing the visible. He prepares the destination before announcing the journey. He establishes the promise before unveiling the path. Right now, there are individuals carrying dreams that others have laughed at. Spoken about the future God placed in your heart, and people dismissed you. They told you to be realistic. They told you not to expect too much. They told you that your circumstances would never change. But people can only evaluate what they see. Operates from what He knows. Human beings see limitations. God sees possibilities. Human beings see obstacles. God sees opportunities. Human beings see the present moment. God sees the entire journey from beginning to end. Underestimate what God can accomplish in a single season. One moment of divine favor can accomplish what years of human effort could never achieve. One door opened by God can change an entire family legacy. One opportunity arranged by God can redirect the course of your future. One relocation orchestrated by God can position you for blessings you never imagined possible. The God who created the heavens and the earth is not limited by economic conditions, social barriers, past mistakes, or current challenges. When God decides it is time to move you, nothing can permanently prevent His purpose from unfolding. Many people assume that relocation is merely about receiving something new. But often, relocation begins with release. Before God fills your hands with new blessings, He asks you to let go of old burdens. Before He introduces you to new opportunities, He asks you to release expired attachments. Before He opens the next chapter, you to close the previous one. This process can be painful because familiarity feels safe, even when it is no longer beneficial. Yet faith means trusting God beyond the boundaries of comfort. Seasons when God intentionally removes support systems you have depended upon. Not because He wants to harm you, but because He wants to reveal that He is your ultimate source. Sometimes God allows situations to become uncomfortable because comfort can become a prison when it prevents growth. Sometimes God allows doors to close because closed doors force us to seek higher doors. Sometimes God allows delays because delays develop strength that immediate success could never produce. Think about how much you have survived already. Consider the battles you thought would destroy you. Remember the nights when fear whispered that you would never overcome your challenges. Reflect on the moments when uncertainty surrounded you like a storm, yet you are still here. You are still standing. You are still believing. That is not an accident. Evidence of God's sustaining power. The same God who carried you through every previous trial is fully capable of leading you into every future blessing. The enemy of progress is often attachment to the past. No church at all. Too many people spend their life trying to recreate seasons that have already ended. They keep looking backward while God is calling them forward. They keep dwelling on what was lost while God is preparing what will be gained. You cannot fully embrace your future while clinging to your past. You cannot walk confidently into a new season while constantly longing for an old one. God's plans are always moving forward. His purpose is always unfolding. Guidance is always leading toward greater wisdom, greater maturity, and greater impact. Today, God is reminding you that your current location is not your final destination. Your current challenge is not your permanent reality. Current struggle is not your lifelong identity. What you see today is only a chapter, not the entire story. God specializes in transforming situations that appear impossible. He delights in creating pathways where none seem to exist. He excels at bringing hope into hopeless circumstances and light into dark situations. There's a difference between being stuck and being planted. When you are planted by God, it's taking place beneath the surface, even when nothing appears to be happening externally. Roots are developing, strength is increasing, character is forming, wisdom is expanding. Then suddenly, at the appointed time, visible growth begins to appear. What seemed like inactivity was actually preparation. What seemed like delay was actually development. What seemed like waiting was actually positioning. Never mistake God's silence for His absence. Because you cannot hear immediate answers does not mean He is not working. Just because you cannot see immediate results does not mean progress is not occurring. God often performs His greatest work behind the scenes. While you sleep, arranging opportunities. While you worry, He is creating solutions. While you question, He is preparing breakthroughs. The unseen activity of God is often more significant than the visible circumstances surrounding you. As June 10, 2026 approaches, receive this message not as a guarantee of a specific physical event, but as a call to faith, readiness, and spiritual openness. The deeper truth is that God is capable of relocating you in every area of life. He can relocate your mindset from fear to confidence. He can relocate your heart from despair to hope. He can relocate your finances from struggle to stability. He can relocate your relationships from dysfunction to peace. Relocate your purpose from confusion to clarity. God's power is not confined to physical movement. His transformative work touches every dimension of human existence. The question is not whether God has the power to move you. The question is whether you are willing to follow when He leads. Many people pray for change but resist the process that produces it. They ask for new opportunities but fear unfamiliar territory. Request greater blessings but hesitate when greater responsibility arrives. Yet every significant transformation requires courage. Every major breakthrough requires trust. Every divine relocation requires faith. Faith is not the absence of uncertainty. Faith is moving forward despite uncertainty. Faith is trusting God's character when you cannot fully understand His methods. Faith is believing that God's wisdom exceeds your own understanding. Faith is refusing to allow temporary circumstances to define eternal possibilities. Faith is declaring that God's promises are greater than your fears. Some of you have spent too much time listening to voices that diminish your potential. Allowed negativity to shape your expectations. You have permitted criticism to weaken your confidence. But hear this clearly, the opinions of people cannot override the plans of God. Limitations others place upon you do not determine your future. The doubts of others do not cancel God's purpose. What God has spoken over your life remains powerful regardless of who believes it. Your journey has not been wasted. Setback taught you something valuable. Every disappointment strengthened your resilience. Every challenge increased your dependence upon God. Every obstacle developed qualities within you that success alone could never create. Very experiences you once wished to avoid may become the foundation of your greatest testimony. God has a remarkable ability to transform pain into wisdom, struggles into strength, and trials into preparation. The season ahead requires expectation. Not passive wishing, but active expectation. Wake up expecting God to work. Pray expecting God to answer. Walk expecting God to guide. Live expecting God to open doors that no human effort could unlock. Expectation creates an atmosphere where faith can flourish. It aligns your heart with possibilities instead of limitation. It positions your mind to recognize opportunities instead of obstacles. Remember that God's timing is perfect, even when it differs from your preferences. There were moments you wanted immediate answers, yet God chose gradual development. There were seasons you desired quick breakthroughs, yet God prioritized deeper growth. Looking back, you can see that many delays protected you from premature opportunities. Many closed doors prevented unnecessary pain. Many unanswered requests prepared you for greater blessings than you originally imagined. Temporary frustrations to make permanent decisions. Do not allow present discomfort to convince you that God has forgotten you. Do not allow current challenges to define your future expectations. The story is not finished. The journey is not over. The purpose is still unfolding. God is still writing chapters you have not yet read. There is tremendous power in surrender. Not surrender to defeat, but surrender to God's wisdom. When you stop insisting on your own timeline and begin trusting God's timeline, peace enters your spirit. When you stop demanding specific outcomes and begin trusting God's guidance, clarity begins to emerge. When you stop carrying burdens that belong to God, strength returns to your soul. Today, choose to believe again. Believe that God sees what you cannot see. Believe that God knows what you do not know. Believe that God is capable of accomplishing what seems impossible. Believe that every promise rooted in His wisdom will come to pass at the proper time. Believe that your future contains opportunities greater than your past. Best days are not necessarily behind you. The God who formed mountains, stretched out the heavens, and created every star in existence is not intimidated by your situation. He is not overwhelmed by your challenges, confused by your circumstances. He knows exactly where you are. He knows exactly what you need. He knows exactly how to lead you toward the next season of your life. So stand tall. Lift your head. Strengthen your faith. Refuse to surrender to discouragement. Refuse to let fear dictate your decisions. Refuse to believe that your current reality is all there is. God is still moving. God is still guiding. God is still opening pathways where none seem to exist. Still preparing blessings that exceed human expectations. And if this is truly your season of relocation, whether physical, emotional, spiritual, or relational, then prepare your heart. Release what no longer serves God's purpose for your life. Embrace the lessons of the past without becoming trapped by them. Look forward with hope instead of fear. Walk confidently instead of cautiously. Trust deeply instead of doubting constantly. Because when God says it is time to move, no force on earth can permanently stop His plan. When God prepares a new place for your growth, no obstacle can ultimately prevent your arrival. When God declares that a season has ended, no amount of resistance can keep it alive. God opens the door to a new chapter. The only appropriate response is faith. So let this message echo in your spirit. God is not finished with you. Your story is still unfolding. Your purpose is still alive. Future is still being shaped by divine wisdom. The waiting has not been meaningless. The struggles have not been pointless. The delays have not been permanent. God has been preparing, positioning, strengthening, and guiding you all along. Move forward with confidence. Move forward with courage. Move forward with expectation. Move forward with faith. For the God who brought you this far has no intention of abandoning you now. The same God who sustained you in difficult seasons will establish you in fruitful seasons. The same God who carried you through valleys will lead you to higher ground. The same God who protected you yesterday will provide for you tomorrow. Your heart may not know every detail of the journey ahead, but it can know this with certainty. God is faithful. God is wise. God is powerful. And wherever He leads, His purpose follows. Wherever He guides, His provision accompanies. Wherever He directs, presence remains. Trust Him. Follow Him. Believe Him. And step into the future with unwavering confidence, knowing that God is always preparing something greater than what you leave behind. And there is something else you must understand in this hour. God does not relocate people merely to make them comfortable. He relocates them to make them effective. There are places where your potential cannot fully breathe because the environment was designed only for a temporary season. Spaces where you learned important lessons, but those spaces were never meant to become your permanent residence. God knows the difference between a training ground and a destination. Too often, become attached to the training ground because they survived there. They endured hardship there. They discovered strength there. But surviving in a place is not the same as being assigned to remain there forever. Sometimes the greatest act of faith is recognizing when God has completed His work in one season and is calling you toward another. Many people are waiting for God to change their circumstances while God is waiting for them to change their perspective. A new home begins in the mind before it appears in reality. A new season begins in faith before it becomes visible. A new chapter begins with an inner conviction that refuses to surrender to old limitations. If you continue thinking like the person you used to be, you may struggle to embrace the opportunities God places before you. God is not only preparing a place for you, He is preparing you for the place. He is expanding your vision, increasing your capacity. He is strengthening your character so that when the blessing arrives, you will have the wisdom to steward it well. There are moments when God intentionally allows you to outgrow your surroundings. Suddenly, once satisfied you no longer fulfills you. What once excited you no longer inspires you. What once seemed large now feels small. This is not ingratitude. This is growth. It is evidence that God is stretching your spirit beyond previous boundaries. The danger is that some people interpret this divine stretching as dissatisfaction and attempt to suppress it. They ignore the stirring. They silence the vision. They resist the calling. Yet the voice of God within the heart cannot remain quiet forever. When God is preparing a transition, He plants a holy expectation within the soul that keeps whispering, there is more ahead. You are not created merely to exist. You were created to fulfill purpose. Every breath you take carries significance. Day you live contains potential. Every challenge you overcome contributes to a greater story being written by God. Never allow temporary setbacks to convince you that your life lacks meaning. God does not waste experiences. He does not waste pain, not waste waiting seasons. Even the moments you wish had never happened can become part of the foundation for future strength and wisdom. Look at how God has sustained you through situations that should have broken your spirit. Seasons when resources were limited, yet somehow provision appeared. There were moments when answers seemed absent, yet somehow guidance emerged. There were times when you felt completely alone, yet somehow strength continued to rise within you. Not coincidence. That was the invisible hand of God preserving you for a purpose greater than your present circumstances. If God intended for your story to end in those difficult seasons, it would have ended already. The fact that you are still here is evidence that your assignment is not complete. Do not underestimate the power of divine timing. Human beings often become frustrated because they evaluate life according to their schedules. They expect immediate results, demand instant progress. They want visible evidence before they are willing to believe. But God often works differently. He develops roots before producing fruit. He establishes foundations before constructing visible structures, prepares character before releasing responsibility. The seasons that feel slow are often the seasons that matter most because they create the strength required for future success. There was a reason why certain doors have remained closed despite your repeated efforts. There is a reason why certain opportunities disappeared despite your best intentions. There is a reason why certain plans failed despite careful preparation. Sees consequences that you cannot see. He understands outcomes that remain hidden from human vision. What feels like disappointment today may later be recognized as one of the greatest acts of protection in your life. Trusting God means believing that His wisdom remains perfect even when His decisions are difficult to understand. Some of you have been carrying the weight of comparison. You look at the progress of others and wonder why your journey seems different, why certain blessings arrive quickly for them while your own process appears longer. But comparison is a thief of peace and a destroyer of gratitude. God writes unique stories for every individual. Assignments require different preparation. Different purposes require different journeys. What matters is not whether your path resembles someone else's path. What matters is whether you are faithfully following the direction God has placed before you. The future God is preparing for you cannot be measured solely by material gain. The greatest blessings are often deeper than possessions. Peace is a blessing. Wisdom is a blessing. Clarity is a blessing. Strength is a blessing. Favor is a blessing. Purpose is a blessing. There are people with great wealth who lack peace. People with modest resources who possess extraordinary contentment because they walk closely with God. Never define success by what can be counted. Define success by alignment with the purpose of God. As God relocates you into a new season, challenge you to release old fears that have quietly controlled your decisions. Fear often disguises itself as practicality. It convinces people to settle for less than what God intended. It whispers that failure is inevitable, magnifies obstacles, and minimizes possibilities. But faith sees differently. Faith acknowledges challenges while remaining confident in God's ability. Faith recognizes uncertainty without surrendering to it. Continues moving forward even when the entire path is not visible. You must learn to distinguish between the voice of fear and the voice of God. Fear says, stay where you are because change is dangerous. It says, trust me because growth requires movement. Fear says, focus on everything that could go wrong. God says, remember everything I have already brought you through. Fear says your limitations are permanent. God says your future is greater than your past. Focus is on human weakness. God reveals divine strength. There are opportunities approaching your life that will require a new level of courage. The old mindset cannot enter the new season. The old doubts cannot dominate the new chapter. Old insecurities cannot control the future God is preparing. This is why God spends so much time working within the heart before changing external circumstances. He understands that transformation begins internally. When the heart changes, vision changes. When vision changes, decisions change. When decisions change, destinies change. Never forget that God's resources are not limited by the conditions surrounding you. Economic uncertainty does not limit God. Human opposition does not limit God. Scarcity does not limit God. Delays do not limit God. Closed doors do not limit God. The Creator of all things operates with a power that transcends every earthly limitation. Appears impossible to human reasoning remains completely possible with God. The challenge is not whether God can do it. The challenge is whether you will continue believing while the process unfolds. Sometimes God relocates people because the next level of their purpose requires a different environment. An eagle cannot fulfill its nature while thinking like a bird that never leaves the ground. Likewise, cannot fully embrace divine purpose while remaining confined by old beliefs and outdated expectations. Growth demands expansion. Expansion demands faith. Faith demands trust. And trust demands surrender. Listeners carrying dreams that have not yet manifested. You have prayed for years. You have waited through disappointments. You have faced moments when giving up seemed easier than continuing to believe. Yet something within you refuses to quit. Persistent hope is not accidental. It is often evidence that God has not finished writing the story. The dream may have encountered delays, but delays are not denials. Waiting is not abandonment. Preparation is not punishment. God is still working even when visible evidence appears limited. The enemy of faith is not always a doubt. Sometimes the enemy of faith is impatience. People become so focused on immediate outcomes that they fail to appreciate ongoing preparation, become discouraged because they cannot see the full picture. Yet if God revealed every detail of the journey in advance, many people would become overwhelmed. This is why He often provides enough light for the next step rather than the entire path. Faith grows when we trust God one step at a time. God is calling you to elevate your expectations, not because life will suddenly become free of challenges, because your understanding of His power must become greater than your awareness of your obstacles. Too many people spend their lives expecting disappointment because disappointment has become familiar. They expect doors to close because rejection has become familiar. They expect failure because struggle has become familiar. But God is calling you to develop a new expectation based on His faithfulness rather than your past experiences. Entering a season where gratitude will become a source of strength. Gratitude keeps the heart aligned with truth. It reminds you of what God has already done while strengthening confidence in what He will do next. Grateful spirit recognizes provision even in difficult seasons. A grateful spirit discovers hope in the middle of uncertainty. A grateful spirit remains grounded when circumstances fluctuate. And as you move forward, remember this powerful truth. God who guides your steps already stands in your tomorrow. He's not reacting to future events. He already knows them. He already understands every challenge you will face and every opportunity you will encounter. Nothing surprises Him, catches Him unprepared. Nothing exceeds His wisdom. Therefore, you can walk into the unknown with confidence because what is unknown to you is fully known to God. So continue believing, continue praying, continue preparing, continue growing, continue trusting. Refuse to allow temporary conditions to determine eternal expectations. Refuse to let fear define your future. Refuse to let past disappointments silence future hope. Keep your eyes fixed on God. Keep your heart anchored in faith. Keep your spirit open to His direction, for God is still opening doors. God is still creating pathways. God is still transforming lives. God is still moving people from limitation into purpose, from confusion into clarity, from struggle into strength, from waiting into fulfillment. The season ahead is not a season for surrendering your hope. It is a season for strengthening your faith. It is a season for lifting your vision. Season for trusting more deeply than ever before that God knows exactly where He is leading you, and His destination for your life is far greater than anything you could have imagined on your own. And as this divine transition draws nearer, a truth that many people overlook: whenever God prepares to elevate your life, He first begins to separate you from what can no longer accompany you into the future. Not everything that was necessary in one season will be necessary in the next. Every connection, habit, mindset, or routine can survive the journey into your new chapter. This is why seasons of transition can sometimes feel lonely. God is not isolating you to harm you. He is creating space for clarity, removing distractions so that His direction becomes unmistakable. He is teaching you to rely on His wisdom more than the opinions of people. The closer you walk with God, the more you realize that His approval is worth more than the applause of crowds. Moments when God will ask you to trust Him beyond what your eyes can verify. The human mind naturally wants evidence before belief, certainty before movement, and guarantees before obedience. But faith does not operate according to those rules. Faith is the decision to trust God's character even when the details remain hidden. Faith is believing that the one who guided you yesterday will not abandon you tomorrow. Faith is standing firm when circumstances shift. Your confidence is anchored in God rather than in temporary conditions. Many people spend years asking God for a miracle while resisting the changes that miracle requires. They pray for new opportunities but cling to old fears, for greater influence but avoid greater responsibility. They desire a larger harvest but neglect the preparation of the soil. Yet God works through principles that cannot be ignored. Every harvest follows a season of planting. Every breakthrough follows a season of perseverance. Every expansion follows a season of preparation. If God is relocating you, then understand that He has already been preparing you in ways you may not fully recognize. Consider how much stronger you are today than you were years ago. The challenges that once intimidated you no longer possess the same power. The obstacles that once seemed impossible no longer appear as overwhelming. Fears that once controlled your decisions have gradually lost their grip. Why? Because God has been developing strength within you through every trial. He has been building resilience through every setback. He has been teaching wisdom through every difficult lesson. What you thought was merely survival was actually training. What you thought was delay was actually development. God was preparing a person capable of carrying greater responsibility, influence, and greater blessings. Do not despise the process that shaped you. The very experiences that caused tears may have produced some of your greatest strengths. Seasons you wanted to escape may have taught lessons that prosperity alone could never teach. There is a depth that only comes from walking through valleys with God. A confidence that only comes from seeing Him provide when resources were scarce. There was a wisdom that only comes from discovering that God's guidance remains reliable even when the road ahead is unclear. Relocation God brings into your life is not merely about changing where you stand. It is about changing how you see. A transformed perspective is often a greater blessing than a changed circumstance. When God opens your eyes to new possibilities, limitations begin to lose their power. When He expands your vision, fear begins to shrink. When He reveals His purpose, confusion starts to disappear. Many people are waiting for external change while God is working to create internal transformation. Once your vision changes, your entire approach to life begins to change as well. You must be careful not to allow past disappointments to become lenses through which you view the future. Because something failed before does not mean it will fail again. Just because a door closed previously does not mean every door will close. Just because you experience rejection does not mean you are destined to remain rejected. Past can teach valuable lessons, but it should never be permitted to dictate future possibilities. God is not confined by your previous experiences. He is able to create outcomes that exceed your expectations and surpass your understanding. A reason God repeatedly calls people to courage. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is the decision that faith will have a louder voice than fear. Courage says, I may not know every detail, but I know God. Courage says, I may not understand the entire journey, but I trust the one who leads me. Courage says, I refuse to let uncertainty stop me from obeying God's direction. Significant move forward requires courage because every step into a new season involves leaving behind something familiar. Some people remain trapped for years because familiarity feels safer than possibility. They stay connected to environments that no longer nurture their growth. They continue repeating patterns that no longer serve their purpose. They settle for predictability rather than pursuing God's calling. There comes a moment when God stirs the heart so deeply that remaining where you are becomes more uncomfortable than moving forward. That stirring is not meant to be ignored. It is an invitation to trust Him at a higher level. God who created you knows exactly what lies dormant within you. He knows the gifts you have not yet fully discovered. He knows the potential you have not yet fully expressed. He knows the impact your life can have when surrendered to His purpose. May judge you according to your current condition. God sees your future potential. While others focus on your limitations, God focuses on the possibilities He placed within you. While others see what you are, sees what you can become through His guidance and power, never underestimate the significance of divine positioning. In life, being in the right place at the right time under God's direction can change everything. Opportunities often appear ordinary until viewed in hindsight. Conversations can become turning points. Small decisions can create major outcomes. A single act of obedience can open doors that years of striving could never unlock. This is why sensitivity to God's guidance is so important. When He directs your steps, He is not merely moving you geographically or circumstantially. He is positioning you for purpose. As you approach this new season, guard your heart against cynicism. Cynicism develops when disappointment remains unresolved. It whispers that nothing will ever change. It encourages people to expect failure as a form of self-protection. But cynicism is incompatible with faith. God calls you to remain hopeful, not because every circumstance is easy, but because His power remains greater than every challenge. Hope is not denial of reality. It is confidence that God can transform reality. You may not realize it now. Some of the things that seem delayed are actually being perfected. Some opportunities require specific timing. Some blessings require additional preparation. Some answers require circumstances to align in ways you cannot yet see. God sees connections, consequences, and outcomes far beyond human understanding. Trusting Him means accepting that His timing is guided by wisdom rather than urgency. There is also a deeper lesson hidden within relocation. Whenever God moves you into a new season, reveals new dimensions of His faithfulness. You discover that He can provide in unfamiliar places. You discover that His guidance remains reliable in new environments. You discover that His protection is not limited to one location or one chapter of life. Every transition becomes an opportunity to know God more deeply. Every challenge becomes an invitation to trust Him more completely. Do not allow the size of the challenge ahead to intimidate you. Magnitude of an obstacle does not determine the outcome when God is involved. Throughout life, people often become overwhelmed because they compare their own strength to the size of the problem. Faith compares the size of the problem to the greatness of God. And when viewed through that perspective, even the largest obstacles begin to shrink. Remember that God is not merely concerned with where you are going, concerned with who you are becoming along the way. Destinations matter, but character matters more. Achievements matter, but integrity matters more. Success matters, but faithfulness matters more. Ultimate goal is not simply to improve your circumstances, it is to transform your life. He desires to develop wisdom where there was confusion, courage where there was fear, patience where there was frustration, and faith where there was doubt. Season ahead may require bold decisions. It may require leaving behind comfortable routines. It may require stepping into opportunities that stretch your abilities. It may require trusting God at a level you have never experienced before. Do not mistake stretching for breaking. God stretches people to increase their capacity. He challenges them to reveal strengths they did not know they possessed. He calls them higher because He sees possibilities they cannot yet see. Lift your eyes beyond your present circumstances. Refuse to become consumed by temporary struggles. Refuse to let today's challenges define tomorrow's possibilities. The God who holds the universe together is fully capable of guiding your life. Not lost sight of your prayers. He has not forgotten your sacrifices. He has not ignored your tears. Every sincere prayer has been heard. Every act of faith has been noticed. Every moment of perseverance has been recorded. Keep walking forward with confidence. Keep believing when evidence seems limited. Keep trusting when answers seem delayed. Keep expecting God's goodness even when the path feels uncertain. Same God who brought you through every previous season is already preparing what comes next. His wisdom is leading you. His power is sustaining you. His purpose is unfolding around you even now. And when the day arrives that you finally see the reason behind the waiting, the purpose behind the preparation, and the wisdom behind the delays, you will understand that God was never withholding His best from you. He was preparing you for it, strengthening you for it. He was positioning you for it. And when you step into that new season, you will not enter it as the same person who began this journey. You will enter it stronger, wiser, deeper in faith, more confident in God's promises, more convinced than ever that every step directed by God ultimately leads toward purpose, growth, and blessing. So as this message comes to an end, let these final words settle deeply into your spirit. You have not come this far by accident. Battle, every delay, every closed door, every sleepless night, every unanswered question, and every difficult season has been part of a greater journey that God has been overseeing from the very beginning. Even when you could not see His hand guiding you, even when you could not hear His voice, He was directing you. Even when you felt forgotten, He was preparing a future that was far greater than anything you could imagine. Do not leave this moment carrying the same fears that you brought into it. Do not walk away with the same doubts, the same limitations, or the same expectations that have kept you confined to old seasons. Lift your eyes higher. Strengthen your faith. Renew your trust in God. The God who created you knows exactly where you are, exactly what you need, and exactly where He is leading you. Nothing in your life is beyond His power. Nothing in your future is beyond His control. Nothing standing before you is greater than the God who stands with you. If God is relocating you, then trust the process. If He is closing one chapter, trust that another chapter is opening. If He is removing something, no church at all. Trust that He is making room for something better. If He is asking you to move forward, trust that He has already gone before you. God never leads His people into a future that His wisdom has not already prepared and His provision has not already supplied. Let June 10, 2026 become more than a date in your mind. Let it symbolize your decision to believe again. Let it represent your refusal to surrender to fear. Let it mark the moment when you chose faith over doubt, hope over discouragement, trust over uncertainty. Whether the relocation God has planned for you is physical, spiritual, emotional, financial, or personal, stand ready with an open heart and an unwavering spirit. Who has sustained you through every storm, is fully capable of leading you into every promise He has prepared. Walk forward with confidence. Walk forward with courage. Walk forward with gratitude. Stop mourning doors that God has closed. Stop fearing roads that God has opened. Stop questioning whether God is working. And start thanking Him because He never stopped working. The waiting season is not your identity. The struggle is not your destiny. The challenge is not your final chapter, final word, and His plans are always greater than your fears. One day you will look back on this season and realize that what felt like delay was actually divine preparation. What felt like uncertainty was actually divine guidance. Felt like loss was actually divine protection. And what felt like the end was actually the beginning of something extraordinary that only God could have orchestrated. So stand firm. Stay faithful. Remain prayerful. Keep your heart aligned with God and your eyes fixed on His promises. Refuse to quit. Refuse to retreat. Refuse to let temporary circumstances weaken eternal faith. The God who opened doors before will open them again. The God who made a way before will make a way again. The God who carried you before will carry you again. Your story is not over. Your purpose is not finished. Your greatest testimony may still be ahead of you. The season is changing. Chapter is turning. The preparation is ending. The journey is advancing. And as God leads you forward, may you walk boldly into the future knowing that His wisdom is directing you, His power is sustaining you, His mercy is covering you, purpose is unfolding through every step you take. Trust God completely. Follow Him faithfully. Believe Him wholeheartedly. And step into next season with confidence, because wherever God leads, there is purpose. Wherever God guides, provision. Wherever God places you, there is a reason. And whatever God has prepared for you will arrive at the perfect time, according to His wisdom, His plan, and His unfailing will. May your faith remain strong, your hope remain alive, trust remain unshaken, because God is still writing your story, and the best chapters are yet to come.